on the show, and we look that affects all Nigerians across the world, and we're doing this for the next 1 hour. This conversation will be happening here. We have a guest both on the phone and live in the studio here joining us. Welcome to the show once again. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube also. We're streaming live. You can watch us there. That's Nigeria Info FM. And you can also leave us your comment on Twitter, where we're actively reaching out to you at Nigeria Info FM. We'll give you the phone numbers in a while. You can also reach us on WhatsApp 08095975805. Start leaving your comments there so we can read as many as we can. Today we're discussing attacks on Nigerians in South Africa, and we will be joined by Mr. Ejimofor Ike, who's the Executive Secretary, Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce. We'll also have Mr. Alexander Oji from the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora joining us shortly. Adetola Olubajo is the president, Nigerian Union in South Africa, and he's in South Africa, so he'll be joining us also via the phone. Welcome to the show again. I'm Wemimo Adewuni.
And I'm Sheriff Quadry. The conversation promises to be quite interesting, and feel free to join us online as well, because we'll be taking your thoughts as we go along on this show. And please just hashtag Morning Crossfire on Twitter if you're following you on Twitter. If you're not following on Twitter, please do that right now. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Oh, love that. Thank you so much for joining us. Achike Chude is here in the studio. Achike, again, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning too.
That's right.
For the last 10 years, black foreigners in South African countries like Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, and Nigeria, to name a few, have lost their lives, their businesses, and property to xenophobic attacks in South Africa.
That's right.
First was May 2008. There was an attack targeted at Zimbabweans that rendered at least 62 people dead and over 5,000 others homeless, some of whom were Nigerians. Lately, Nigerians seem to be suffering more and more attacks from South African nationals, especially with the recent killings of Nigerians and destruction of Nigerian-owned businesses in South Africa. According to South Africa's 2016 community survey, it is estimated that 30,314 people, that's about 2% of foreign-born people living in South Africa, are from Nigeria.
Right.
Whereas the United Nations estimate puts this figure at about 27,326 as at 2017. Also, data reveal that 127 Nigerians have been killed in 3 years, while 13 out of these were reportedly killed by the South African police. From January to June 2019, 10 Nigerians have been killed either by citizens or South Africans or by the South African Police Service. The most recent wave of attacks started on Wednesday, August 28th. Shops have been looted. Lives have been lost. You must have seen the video. And according to a recent BBC News report, I quote, "The South African government does not collect data on attacks or threats against foreign nationals. However, the South African Center for Migration and Society has monitored the attacks across South Africa since 1994. The Xeno Watch tracker collates media reports as well as information from activists, victims, and observers. If you take a look at these numbers, you know that a lot is happening.
Right,
President Muhammadu
right.
Buhari reached out to President Cyril Ramaphosa and they planned to have a meeting on this in October.
Right.
They also met in Japan recently. I felt it was just so much of a tete-a-tete and say, okay, we'll see again in October. But over the past few days, if you've seen social media as agog with videos of Nigerians beaten to death,
Right. Properties destroyed, valuable properties,
So-
businesses ruined.
For this morning, Utodi, we're having on the phone, he's in South Africa, but he's joining us via the phone, Mr. Adetola Olubajo, who's the president, Nigerian Union in South Africa. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, we hope we can make this work as well as possible because it's in South Africa. We have also on the line Mr. Ejimofor Ike, who's Executive Secretary, Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go ahead, Achike Chude is also here with us in the studio. Let's play to you the meeting between President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Muhammadu Buhari in Japan and what President Ramaphosa had to say.
We are going to be discussing all that, and because we have such good relations, we talk about these things. And the issue of Nigerians who are dying in South Africa, and we feel very sad about that. And obviously our criminal justice system is working on it. We want to stop all killings. Nobody should ever be killed, even if there's a dispute amongst people. So it was also good to have this opportunity here in Japan to renew the bonds between us and to talk about common things between South Africa and Nigeria. And we know that we have to play a very key role in the further development of the continent.
That was President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, speaking in Japan about Nigeria-South Africa relations. A video also trending since yesterday, Sheriff mentioned this morning, is a video by the Deputy Minister of Police in South Africa to President Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Bongani Michael Mkongi, who had some comments to make about the role of the police, their allegations of foreign nationals being killed by the South African police. And here is what he had to say.
How can a city in South Africa be 80% foreign nationals? That is dangerous. That in Hillbrow and the surrounding areas, South Africans have surrendered their own city to the foreign nationals. The nation should discuss that particular question. You won't find South Africans in other countries dominating a city into 80%, because if we do not debate that, that necessarily means the whole South Africa could be 80% dominated by foreign nationals. And the future president of South Africa could be a foreign national. We are surrendering our land. And it is not xenophobia to talk truth. We fought for this land from a white minority. We cannot surrender it to the foreign nationals. That is a matter of principles. We fought for this country, not only for us, for the generations of South Africans. The arms that are being used here in Hillbrow are arms of war, which are unlicensed. The hijacking of buildings here in Hillbrow is a sign of taking over power. The question of dominance of foreign nationals in illegal trading and also businesses that are here in Hillbrow is an economic sabotage that is taking place against our people. These buildings are being occupied and hijacked by people and lunatics that we don't know. People are being raped there. There's drug dealing there. There are illegal shippings there. There is second-hand goods, businesses of stolen goods, by the way, and all sorts of criminal activities. And we must do something about it. I want to ask the nation, South Africa, and the so-called human rights activists and organizations, what must the police do when they are shot at by criminals? Must they sink Africa, or they must return fire? We are losing police officers day in, day out, but we are protecting criminals that are terrorizing our community.
Well, that video has got everyone talking all morning, where he has said that foreign nationals have taken up 80% of South Africa, and they're saying they cannot continue to do that. Let's speak first with Mr. Adetola Olubajo, who's the president of Nigeria Union in South Africa. Welcome to the show again, sir. We're trying to make this line work. Tell us what's kicked off this round of violence in South Africa.
Good morning once again. I may not be able to say what actually sparked the last 2 days attack, but I will want to relate it to the one that happened in Victoria, where the taxi driver alleged that a foreign national shot one of their members. So they went on a protest, and the protest became violent. Lots of shops were looted and burnt. Then normalcy returns after 2 days. But on Sunday, there was a fire in a building, kind of an hijacked building. It's an abandoned building where 3 people succumbed to their injuries as a result of the fire. But after that, some group of people went on rampage again, looting and attacking, which is not surprising to us, because we know that at every opportunity, some locals always do that. But why the Zulu dwellers the hostel dwellers rose in that on Sunday evening till early hours of Monday, burning and looting and then attacking businesses suspected to be owned by foreigners. That's I cannot lay my hands on for now, but I just want to believe that they are trying to relate it to what happened in Victoria.
Social media is agog with what is going on, but how truly widespread is this attack on foreign nationals? Is this a big issue, or is this just blown out of proportion by social media? You're on the ground in South Africa. Is this really a big issue right now?
It's a big issue. It's not overblown by the social media, because a situation whereby you see just a country can have a record of over 50 businesses touched within a space of less than 12 hours. That's a big issue. So I want to believe that if those people are in their various businesses, they will have been attacked. I will have recalled death of Nigerians. But we thank God that this time around we have not recalled so far. We have not recalled any death of Nigerians, but people have lost their long term hard-earned investments, and this is a means of their livelihood. So they are traumatized, and this is not the first time it's happening. It happens. The police comes in, they quench the fire, they quench the rampage, and then everybody go about their normal business. People pick up their PCs. After some years, it happens again. And so it's a big issue that needs attention at the highest level of government.
There are reports in the media that 3 Nigerians have died. Are you saying no Nigerian has been killed in these recent attacks?
We don't have any report of that. 3 people died in the fire, and their identity have not been revealed. And we know, because we have every presence of our union in Johannesburg, we believe that if there is any Nigerian among those 3, we will have known. So there is no probability at all that among those 3 are Nigerians. And Nigerians hardly live in that kind of building also.
All right.
So we don't expect to have a Nigerian casualty, except if it's new, because according to what we have, the report we have at our disposal now, no Nigerian has been killed.
All right, Mr. Adetola, please hold the line. Mr. Ejiofor, thank you for staying on the line as well. You are the Executive Secretary, Nigeria, South Africa Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to ask you, what do you know about the recent attacks? Let's begin from there as well. What do you know? What started this round of attacks on Nigerians?
Well, let's start first by saying that, good morning all, that by saying that relationship between Nigeria and South Africa is very strategic to Africa. And if you look at the trade volume, it's about 1.3 trillion, which is very significant, really. And one will expect that Nigerian government and South African government will recognize the importance of ensuring that volatile areas are given the significant attention they require, particularly the South African government. Issues of differences has always been there. But if you look at what usually happens, you can relate it to the low-level South Africans, particularly those who feel that they have an entitlement mentality, that this is their country, and if anybody comes here, is taking our jobs, and is affecting our economy as it were, without recognizing the fact that Nigerians that are there are only adding to them. And some of them, because they do not have the history of the role that Nigeria played in the apartheid, do not see how significant Nigeria is to them. So one can say that the problem we're seeing right now is beyond what we can see on the physical. It needs an in-depth evaluation and then a reorientation of South Africans, particularly in those areas that are very volatile. And then the government itself requires to pay serious attention to this thing. Because if you look at it, some Nigerians have the impression that the South African police is paying lip service to what is happening.
Okay.
Granted that we cannot say that South African government is xenophobic, no. But the things that are happening can be dovetailed to those levels I've always said who are xenophobic, but not really South African government. So I believe that these issues can be addressed significantly between the two presidents. Thank God that at least the Nigerian president is likely going to have a meeting in October.
Let's look at this from the angle of business. You are in the business community, especially when it comes to Nigeria, South Africa. How has this affected? How has this impacted on the business community?
Well, it has a significant impact in the sense that, like yesterday, I was called from South Africa by some of the South African businessmen who are supposed to be coming to Nigeria, and they are asking me, the trend of events in South Africa is creating fear in them for them to come to Nigeria, expecting that Nigerians are going to, reciprocate as it were. But I told them, well, you can come. I don't think there's any problem, but these issues have to be addressed. Basically, the chamber focused on bilateral trade relations.
Right.
And anything that affects business should be our concern. If you look at the time that the National Association of Nigerian Students, threatened business, South African business in Nigeria,
right,
the chamber had to create a platform on which we invited the president of NANS and his team and all that, and we had a meeting. We tried to also make them understand. If you attack some of these businesses, you're attacking Nigerians. Look at, for instance, MTN. MTN has about 12 South Africa, others are Nigerian. So whatever happens there, it has a ripple effect on Nigerians whose source of livelihood is from MTN, and that also extends to other South African businesses. Nigerians who are there most of them, I believe, are there legally. And I believe that most of them are also law-abiding. I'm saying most of them are also law-abiding.
Right.
And then you believe that when you are law-abiding, that you have the government owe you some protection levels. And I think that is why it seems as if people are reacting significantly when they feel that the South African police is not doing enough.
Well, we just played an audio from the South African Deputy Police Minister, Mr. Bongani, which many people have said is even inciting further violence by saying that 80% of the country has been taken over by foreign nationals and they need them out to be able to provide jobs and housing for their citizens. That video has gotten a lot of reactions on social media. We have joining us now Mr. Orji Alexander. He's from the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora. Let me come to Achike Chude first before I come to you on this one. If you just go over to social media, we had this conversation for 30 minutes on the 6 a.m. hour, and Nigerians kind of strongly believe that Nigeria has to take a decisive action on this right now. And, let's stop patronizing South African businesses in Nigeria. Maybe they will feel the impact. Do you think this is the way to go?
Well, when you were earlier on, you were reading the news excerpt on what was going on, the xenophobia in South Africa. You did quote the Minister of Foreign Affairs who said enough is enough. And I smiled in ironic pain because I remember the part of Bob Marley's songs, one of his songs, he said, how many times do we have to suffer? How many more we have to die? So when Nigeria is saying enough is enough, after how many such similar incidences, we understand the need for the government as much as possible to want to show maturity, to want to show patience and the rest, but not at the detriment of the lives of Nigerians. And this has gone on for far too long. The reality again is listening. If it's shocking, it is chilling. What you read, the Deputy Police Commissioner Minister in South Africa said, because that was not like an incitement, it was an incitement. And so that gives you an idea of the currency of thought that is running in the minds of South Africans, privileged South Africans. And I will read an excerpt from a statement that the first Foreign Affairs Minister, Home Minister for South Africa, after the independence of South Africa, made before the National Assembly, its National Parliament in 1997. And he said, quote, with an illegal population estimated at between 2.5 million and 5 million, it is obvious that the socioeconomic resources of the country, which are under severe strain, as it is, are further being burdened by the presence of illegal aliens. Citizens he said, emphasized that citizens should aid the department and the South African police services in the detection, prosecution, and removal of illegal aliens from the country. The cooperation of the community is required in the proper execution of the department's functions. In a way, if you look at it, there is no difference between what he said then in 1997 and what is going on.
What he emphasized on there is the presence of illegal migrants.
No, it doesn't matter.
And he asked the communities to identify
there's
them.
An obligation. There's an international obligation. There are conventions, requisite conventions by countries. Even in the treatment for even illegal aliens, they are also human beings. And the even illegal aliens also have certain inalienable rights that must be respected. You understand? And so when you want to do something about them, you must follow due process. But when you now say citizens must also help or aid the security forces in detecting, removal, and all of that of illegal immigrants, what message are you sending? And so that's why I'm saying that there's nothing more different from what he said in 1997 with what is happening. Look, we know what has gone on in apartheid South Africa, what went on in apartheid South Africa. We know the issue of, we understand the issue of social dislocation. But it strikes me that the authorities in South Africa are, allowing this to go on because they need to make up for their inefficiency, for their inability to deliver on social services. There was a basis on which the South Africans, the black South Africa attained independence, and so they were supposed to reduce inequality. That was part of it. They were supposed to redistribute, because, for instance, when the woman talks about the physical occupation of parts of South Africa by aliens, or whether they are illegal or not even illegal, I don't think she even distinguished between that, or the deputy minister distinguished between that. But again, what are you now going to talk about? The economic space in South Africa being occupied by as much as 80-85% by white South Africans, even if they are South Africans. And that was not even in the spirit and the terms of the agreement for the independence of South Africa. So what are you going to say about that?
Before we go on our first break, Achike, we need to go on a break soon. But let me bring in Mr. Alexander on this one. The argument here on this table is the Nigerians in South Africa, are they mostly illegal migrants? To go to South Africa, you need a visa. That means the country must accept that you should come. And if you're coming to do business, it would be stated clearly that you're coming to run a business. So with this data we have, and with your working with Nigerians in diaspora, do you really believe that foreign nationals take up 80% of South African space, and the Nigerians are also going there illegally and doing illegal business? Does this justify what's going on?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, and then a good morning to Nigerians, and also to state a few facts of some of the details we have at our disposal. The truth be told, we know that there's a lot of Nigerians in South Africa. What is even alarming is that the records we have now shows that we have over 1 million Nigerians in South Africa, and that's a whole lot figure.
Regular and irregular.
We'll come to the regular or irregular aspect, but what we've been able to ascertain is that a lot of Nigerians are doing well, extremely well in South Africa. In fact, it's been in rhetorics now that there is no university or hospital without a specialist that's a Nigerian. So it just shows that we have our people grounded there. But coming to the irregular aspect, yes, we know that some of our people are a little bit porous, and some of them are doing illegal businesses there. Yes, we've been able to establish that fact, especially in the areas of prostitution and drug. Okay. But it is not to say that a few bad eggs should, have the stings on all of them. But what we've been able to try and do is that over the years, there's been a mass, flock to South Africa on the promissory that it's a heaven. Once you get there, everything, all your dreams will be fulfilled and achieved. And that's the biggest problem we're having today as orientating our people. Because in the first instance, like you said, they get a visa to go to South Africa. And in getting to pass the visa requirements, is most times you have to fulfill the financial requirements.
Yeah.
Right.
And then these barons, I wouldn't use the word drug, but these barons who can finance it would put things in place to ensure that they get this visa. So once they get into the country, a lot of them do not even know what they're going there to do. So when they get in there, they're subjected to masters who now dictates to them what they do. And that's
you're talking here about trafficking. This is trafficking. Yes, I mean, if you've been deceived to going into another country.
It's organized trafficking, and it's not only in South Africa. We have a big, in fact, one of the ones that we're hoping that it doesn't happen is Malaysia. Because the biggest one now that will probably happen is Malaysia. And once it does, Nigerians will be crying more than we're crying in South Africa. In the case of South Africa, we're seeing the bodies, yes, but in the case of the Asian countries, we might not be seeing the bodies. We've had a lot of stories which we cannot verify at the moment. We're working with some international communities and organizations to see how we can be able to get to those roots and be able to get at this information.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear about the drug trafficking and everything and how Nigerians are flocking in South
Human
Africa.
trafficking, not drug, because we've not been able to catch any Nigerian now.
Yeah.
All right. I hear you, but we've also seen pictures and videos of legitimate businesses being attacked. How does this justify, the issue of Nigerians taking up their jobs or Nigerians getting involved in selling drugs and prostitution in South Africa?
Well, one thing be told, South Africa at the moment is tense. And once there's tension, it is almost difficult to manage it just by mere words of expression. Just as Nigerians are tensed about the continued killings, despite the various, if it happens again, we'll do this. It's empty threats. And just like I heard in the studio just this morning, I read the comments of the Minister of External Affairs on his tweet, not an official address to the nation or to the country at large, that, look, we're taking these proactive actions. He just says, no, enough is enough. It's the
Minister
same,
of
it's like
Foreign
when you
Affairs,
say, just like saying we have a book, we'll bring them to book. We've had countless books, and none of this book has ever made any meanings. So I do not take that word seriously. And then again, you can see the exoneration of Abike Dabri's office saying it is only at the minister's level.
We tried reaching her, by the way, to bring out the show.
I wanted to ask Abike in recent interactions with her. I said, what was the essence of the creation of the diaspora
Your office?
It is meant for you to interact, not just interact, follow up on the Nigerians in diaspora. Because we've seen that Nigerians in diaspora are making remarkable contributions to this growth of this nation. So why must we leave our own brothers and sisters, at their own detriment outside the country? And then each time this pronouncement is made, nobody follows it up.
Right.
Yes, because it always goes at the top.
Let's talk about solutions when we come back from this break. We have a full house, and social media is agog with comments and also WhatsApp. If you're not sending us your messages on WhatsApp, I don't know. The WhatsApp number is 08095975805. We'll be reading your comments also on Twitter, on Facebook, and YouTube as soon as we come back. We'll talk solutions and the way forward. Mr. Ejiofor Ike is Executive Secretary, Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce. He's on the phone joining us here. We also have from South Africa, Mr. Adetola Olubajo, who's the president, Nigeria Union in South Africa. Mr. Orji Alexander is also here from the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora. And we have Achike Chude here, and we have you listening. We're talking solutions when we come back from this break. It's a morning crossfire. We're looking at attacks on Nigerians in South Africa and the way forward on the show today. I am Wemimo Adewuni.
And I am Sheriff Quadry.
We'll be back shortly, please.
Your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff. your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff.
Yes, this is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff. And today we're looking at the attack on Nigerians in South Africa. We played to you the voice of the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, who spoke on the attacks on foreign nationals and saying that the government will do something about it. We also played to you Mr. Bongani Michael Mkongi's voice as the Deputy Minister of Police in South Africa to President Cyril Ramaphosa. He made that statement in 2017 and the video has resurfaced as the attacks again have resurfaced. We have a full house today. We have Mr. Xenophobic with us on the phone. He's Executive Secretary in Nigeria, South Africa Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for holding the line, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Orji Alexander is from the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora. He's here with us in the studio. Achike Chude is also here. We have Mr. Adetola Olubajo, President, Nigeria Union in South Africa, over the phone. Mr. Adetola, Nigerians are making comments. I'm looking at some comments from Facebook now. Let me read some of them to you. Let's see. There are so many. I'm just trying to juggle this. One of the comments says that Nigerians should return to Nigeria. Saying it's not by force to stay there. So, do you think this would help? Do you think Nigerians in South Africa should come back home if South Africans don't want them to stay there? What's your take on this one?
Okay, I think on that, those are quick fix solutions that cannot be, it's not a long-lasting solution because if South Africa doesn't want foreign nationals to be in their country, they will stop giving visa. They will have to pull out of the Vienna Conventions and some of the international treaties they have entered into. And so we are all global citizens. Some of the people who are saying this, if they have the opportunity to live in a peaceful environment, they will relocate. So it's not, that shouldn't be at any point in time, because if all Nigerians leave and come back home, are we going to allow those South Africans that are here to continue living? So that's a chaotic solution. What we need to do is to do something different from what we have been doing. Like the Foreign Affairs Minister says that there will be a definitive measure. Yes, people may not believe in that statement, but the Foreign Affairs Minister have never at any point in time spoken very tough like that before. And that is one of the reasons why that I believe in what he's saying, that something will be done. Because this is the first time I see him getting fired up about this issue. Though he has been doing a lot of things, because I've met with him quite a number of times, and he has been trying as much as possible to resolve it on a very closed-door diplomatic level. But like I always say, and I will continue to say it sounds very harsh, our government needs to act. Because if they don't act, lives will be lost. Everywhere is tensed. People are not even allowing their children to go to school. I had to call my wife and say, please, even though it can never, I will believe that it may not never get to where we stay, but some people may want to take advantage. Right. Let's withdraw our children for now and stay with them. So it's something that they need to do. And I want to correct something also.
Okay.
This deputy police minister, his comments is condemned, is insightful, but he's not more the deputy police minister. He has been dealt with. That was one of the reasons why he was removed.
Yeah.
So he has been dealt because the government does not. He's not representing the government. Right. Because immediately he did that, the government reprimanded him. So if we are now using it as a basis now, we may not be able to judge in a very good, with very good evidence. Yes, there is hatred around there. But we believe that the people that is going to take the first step, that is going to take the initiative to stop this, is our own government.
Right.
Because you have to protect your people first.
Right, let me ask Mr. Xenophobic very quickly. Let me read to you a comment. That's my question. Chinedu Chukwuka on Facebook says, at this rate, if the federal government seizes South African businesses' interest in Nigeria, I'll support it 100%. This has to stop. Only a decisive action would make this happen. Do you think that it is at all possible that Nigeria will then shut down South African businesses in Nigeria? If we do that, if we are able to do that, what will be the impact?
If you look at South African businesses that are in Nigeria, you will observe that we don't have up to 1% of South Africans that are working in those business areas. They are all Nigerians. And for one to take decisions like that, you also look at the ripple effect on Nigerians and their families. And for me, I expect that what we should be looking at right now is to see how South African government can take some deliberate steps in dissuading their citizens from engaging in xenophobic attack.
What would these deliberate steps be? What are the steps we anticipate that the South African government can take to assuage the situation?
You know, there is something about when the leader expresses commitment to decisions that trickles down. And that means that it's from the president to the ministers and every other person that has one role to play or the other. And that can drive understanding on the level of those low-level South Africans that are taking these steps in vandalizing and looting businesses in South Africa, particularly Nigerian businesses. And then one will also expect that the experience we have seen so far should also encourage South Africans to be able to have a panel of inquiries to investigate these killings and destruction of properties belonging to Nigerians, and their findings to be made public. And that for me will also help them to understand the root cause of this violence, and then be able to address it very significantly. It's important, really. If you look at what is happening right now, you find out that Nigerian business people, if you are very conversant with South Africa, you find out that Nigerian businesses are usually all those small SMEs and all that. And then some of them are employing South Africans. And that for me should be encouraged.
The argument is that Nigerians go to South Africa. I mean, this is, corridor talk. And then they begin to sell things at cheaper prices and run South Africans out of business.
And even substandard goods.
Some substandard goods. So is this good business relations? We had an argument, someone yesterday saying, if you come into someone's country, you shouldn't be selling at a cheaper price than they're selling there. But I'm saying it's an open market. I can decide to sell at the price I want to sell. Do you think Nigerians in South Africa should begin to work with market price, whatever price South Africans are selling at? They should also put their prices at those same prices. Maybe there wouldn't be so much problem.
Well, in South Africa, there's a government organ that checkmates standard of goods that are brought into the country.
Absolutely.
And then as a businessman, you have a choice to sell at whatever price you want to, as long as it benefits you. And for me, that's very critical. You can't tell a businessman what to sell. He decides what to sell as long as he makes his margin.
Right.
So if you feel you don't want him to sell at that price, you can come and flood the place with their own goods and also be able to match his own price.
Mr. Ejiofor, please hold the line. Mr. Alexander, let me come to you. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Jeffrey, has said government will have to take definitive measures. Looking at the solution towards this, what do you think should be those definitive measures?
Well, it's good it's coming from the guy at the top, and what I mean is that there are lots of diplomatic instruments at their disposal, and who else can use it better than them? So when we have these situations where a lot is happening in the international scene, it is not the duty of Nigerian government to protect Nigerians in South Africa. It is the duty of the South African government to protect the people in their own country, just as we're also doing the same for South Africans in Nigeria. I don't think we've recorded any deaths of South Africans, at least this year alone. But this year alone, we have recorded over 20 deaths of Nigerians in South Africa, or even more, because we have records of missing persons which we're still working with the Nigerian Union in South Africa, NUSA, and the Consul General's Office, and a few other relevant persons to help us in getting to the root of this matter. But again, you see, the challenge has always been how we project and present ourselves in the international community.
Right.
When we have not taken lives seriously, how then do we expect other people to value our lives?
To take us seriously.
Just about 2 days ago, my nephew was gunned down, in Benin, Edo State. He was shot 7 times, and the police till today cannot even tell where to begin with investigations,
So
and
sorry
this
to
is
hear
a
that.
regular reoccurrences everywhere we go. And then we ask ourselves, where are we leaving it? How can we even hold the South African government to ransom? If we're talking about the price issues, I don't think that's actually the major boiling point. The major boiling point is that South Africans feel threatened by the presence of Nigerians who are very industrious people. So what the South African government need to do is to step up in terms of its trainings to its people. Because let's not forget that the people who are actually engaged in this are the low individuals who probably have felt that the only way they can get this is to be on the streets and continue to get the free benefits.
So poverty is a fuel
It's
for this
a
issue.
major fuel, because as we speak now, the hearsay we hear in South Africa is that there are no jobs. So people are just scrambling to survive. And then again, bringing it home, our government has always paid these lip services over the years. And that's why the numbers have continued to increase. Because each time there is a serious intervention, or meant to be a serious intervention, it becomes a jamboree. The last major intervention, was in 2015, when the Senate and some members of the House of Assembly had to pay a visit to South Africa, and there were some discussions, including the current Minister of Foreign Affairs. He headed that trip. And then we expected that when you come back, there should have been a follow-up. Let us not even forget that Nigerians are also destitute in South Africa. When we're saying that Nigerians are doing well, there's so many of them today. We're even working with some international agencies to see how to bring them back to Nigeria and then reintegrate them, because they're also, constituting nuisance to the country.
Yeah.
Then again, we'll come back to ask ourselves, is this a short-term solution we're looking at, or a long-term solution?
What would be the long-term solution?
The first thing is the image of our people have been so battered. And the first thing you do is to begin to rebuild the image. Because the easiest way to kill a dog is brand it a bad name. Anywhere that dog passes, people will throw stone at it. Why? Because everybody seems to perceive that Nigerians are criminals. And then we forget that every day Nigerians are, doing remarkable things, tremendous things all over the world. Just as the way South Africans that are here are also contributing, economically. Let's even leave out the jobs. Some of the South African businesses that are in Nigeria today, if we collapse them, the country will almost go into bigger issues. That's why I'm saying a lot of people don't know. Forget about the shoppings and the rest of them and a few other communication companies. There are other essential services that South African businesses run here, which in the first instances Nigeria shouldn't have allowed. But it's not for discussion for today. Because we are saying that our people are involved in petty trades in South Africa. How come that the South Africans are not involved in petty trades in Nigeria? So it means there's no reciprocation.
There's a video, Sheriff, is just scroll past, please. It's a video of someone being burnt. That's really unacceptable. We need to go to the phone line soon.
There's so many other things that are happening that, it's appalling to even mention. But we're hoping that this time, as you get to
I hope so too. President Muhammadu Buhari and President Cyril Ramaphosa have a meeting scheduled for October. October, we don't know what date it is, so that's over 1 month. Yes, that's over 1 month from now. Achike Chude. But the Foreign Affairs Minister says we'll be doing something definite about it.
Yeah.
What can we do right now? Solutions.
Well, I think the recent happening has given that meeting in October a greater impetus, even make it nearer.
But the statement by the presidency on Twitter did not say the meeting was being moved forward. They only condemned the attacks and said they'll do something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It should have given it greater impetus to have that meeting sooner than later. But regardless of that, the reality is that looking at solutions and all that. We need to rebuild Nigeria. We need to build our country. We need to. There was a time Nigeria attracted a lot of respect internationally, world over, and I've always maintained that you can only give what you have. And so, if you are not strong at home, you cannot be strong abroad. It's as simple. I mean, international relations. That's just it. But beyond that, again, is the fact that precisely for the reason that my friend here just talked about. He talked about the fact that the South Africans have a greater stake in our economy than we have in their economy. But rather than looking at it from a negative perspective of the consequences to Nigeria, it is a consequence to them if we do move against their businesses in this country. So there must be a way that we send out feelers, the right kind of feelers, that will hurt your businesses, even though we are going to be hurt in the process. And I've also said that because they're making so much money from this country, it is going to propel the businessmen in South Africa, the business who have businesses here, to begin to put serious pressure on their home government to protect their business interests in Nigeria because of their inability to secure the lives of Nigerians. So that is a plus. The fact that they have a bigger stake within our economy.
Let me pause you, Achike, because the phone lines are buzzing.
We need to go to the phone
I'm not sure we'll be able to read all the comments, but let me read this one from Twitter. Odetola Portlanre says Nigerian government must bring out Nigerians in South Africa home safely through refugees and then proceed to report to the UN. Emmanuel Olofintoyi says, I feel Nigerian government should act fast in closing down some of these South African companies. Let the South Africans also feel what we feel. Akonde Aziz Alao says it's pathetic. Such heinous acts are being dealt to Africans by Africans. We have lots of comments also on WhatsApp. Let me read a couple of them. We have this coming in from No Name. Says, thanks for bringing this topic to the fore. And more than enough damage has been done to... okay, now I can't... Okay, it says he won't ever use their digital TV decoder anymore. And even the SIM he has is... breaking it and changing it to something else. We have a comment also. Please include your names when you send your messages. That would be better. Maxwell sent us a message on WhatsApp from Moscow. It says the man at the Center for Protection is not protecting the image of Nigerians in South Africa by his assertions on the negativity of Nigerians in South Africa. Does not portray a good image for us. It says there's a trust deficit between the Nigerians and South Africans are just obsessed and jealous of the progress of Nigerians.
Let's go to the phone lines very quickly and let's hear what Nigerians have got to say. Hello, good morning to you.
Good morning to you,
Yes,
Quadry, Adewuni.
Welcome.
Achike, good morning to you.
Good morning.
My name is Ms. YS, calling from Abuwado.
All right, please, let's make this happen in 30 seconds.
Thank you, my dear. The best thing to do is for federal government to send a very powerful delegation to South Africa. It's the vice president to lead the delegation, not the foreign minister, to go and tell the president of South Africa what is really going on as it affects Nigeria and other African countries.
Yeah,
Secondly, we don't need to close the industry in Nigeria because majority of Nigeria work in that industry.
Right.
And can we identify any South African man in Nigeria? This is impossible. They are not a small trader like us. We go there to trade, but are they trading in Nigeria? The answer is no.
Right.
And thirdly, the best thing to do again, if the South African parents wait first to listen, we should do the matter to parent board. That's United Nations.
All right, then, Prince Wise.
Right, thank you so much.
For calling.
On
Appreciate your time.
WhatsApp, Ngozi says seizing South African businesses in Nigeria for 1 month will hurt South Africa. 60% of group revenue to DSTV and MTN globally comes from Nigeria, and the South African businesses here make so much money and make huge profit. If we do this, we will be sending a strong signal to South African government, and they will take a drastic step to curb these killings.
All right, Friday joins us now from Ojo. Friday, good morning to you. Thanks for holding.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Friday.
Please, I want to ask a question. The way the South Africans are killing Nigeria in South Africa, are they also killing the American citizen and the British citizen or the French citizen?
They're killing other Africans.
Other
Africans, not British.
Yes, because they know that we Africa, we can go to anywhere. Our leaders will not protect us. This is why they are doing it to us. See, mind you, let them try it and kill one America in their country. The next minute, you will see the reaction of America president. They will not wait a day or an hour before they make a pronouncement. See, in our country here, even in our country, Nigeria here, a lot of us many people are being killed and molested every day on daily basis. When I was growing up in our village, my father used to tell us that if you don't protect your children at home, you don't defend them, you don't expect outsiders to protect them for you.
Right, thank you so much, Friday. On Twitter, Dolani Robert says, only a lazy man will say others are taking their jobs and stuff. They need to wake up and go out and hustle. Okay, that's it.
Let me take this on Kenneth Mokoria, and he says this is because they have noticed that we Nigerians hate ourselves here in Nigeria, so they have capitalized on it. For instance, the North will tell the East people, that's the Igbos, to leave their land, and the West will also tell the East, the Igbos, to leave their land. That is just the message we send to the outside world about us in Nigeria. Unity at home first. That's from Facebook, Kenneth Mokoria.
Right.
Jonathan is here. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Yeah, Sheriff, how you doing?
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, I want to appreciate you guys for bringing this topic on board.
Thank you.
Right, just like I said in the morning, now, since I was born, I don't have digital TV in my house, and it's deliberate. Especially from these South Africans. The reason is because they are even cheating us inside the country. Now they are even killing us outside the country. I think right now it's gone beyond. It's gone beyond. I'm very sorry to say their business interests in this country to be looked into, and if they cannot make us live in their country peacefully, I think we should start taking another direction right now. I think it should go beyond the mouth talk right now. It should go beyond it, and we should make it very glaring to them. I think enough is enough.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let's read some comments also from Facebook. There are so many. Olawiwo Abiola says, I think as a nation, we should boycott their businesses here vis-a-vis MTN, Shoprite, DSTV, among others. In other words, we should stop patronizing their products at least for 5 days, which will be affected, but it's just a sacrifice. I've seen some people make that pledge on Twitter, say for 1 week.
It's even trending.
Yes.
All South African businesses are trending on Twitter.
like for 1 week, it's upsetting. Let's speak to Vincent. He's on the line from Apapa.
All right.
Vincent, good morning.
Good morning to everybody in the studio.
Morning.
Good morning.
You know, my brothers and sisters, we must first put our house in order. In fact, the global community and coming down to Africa, they have all seen that we are more or less dismembered giants. So all of them, they are capitalizing on it. We have to sit up here at home. Here is dismembered and badly bastardized. So they are all watching. Even many of them outside Nigeria, outside social Nigeria, they are seeing what is happening here every second more than we here. The global breaking news. So we are just toothless bulldogs, if I may say that.
Right. Thank you.
The thing is this. Our people are engaging in petty trading there, as the analyst said, and have known that for a very long time. Then here, the guys are holding key structural positions in services and whatever. So look at the disparity. It's too high. It's more than a million miles.
Thank you so much. Let's also read a comment. Raphael Adegoke says the solution to these xenophobic attacks is for the federal government to take up squarely with the South African government. The ambassador should be summoned to explain what is happening to our citizens in South Africa, and the Nigerian government should insist that the South African government should address the problem, or else bilateral agreements and ties with South Africa will be suspended. Also here, Bukata Ishaku Zuya says the South Africans are just being jealous of Nigerians who are doing extremely well in South Africa. Victor Oshin says Nigerian government is insensitive to the plight of Nigerians in South Africa. Why wait till October before discussing issues that require immediate attention? He says that's too bad.
Let me quickly ask Mr. Ejimo for this particular question. Please, I'd like to just get a clarification. There is a report that Nigerians who visited our embassy in South Africa were turned back. How true is that report? They visited to register their displeasure over these incidents of xenophobic attacks, and the doors were shut.
Well, I won't say I won't confirm that the doors are shut. You know how most of these embassies work. They have their timing, and also you must have an appointment. If you look at the way also South African work here, you don't really have any business going to embassy, whatever transaction, apart from it is a diplomatic related, meeting.
What of in an emergency situation such as we have on our hands right now?
The report was that they went there to seek asylum, and they are Nigerians.
To seek asylum?
Yes. While they were running away, or refuge, if you could call it that. There's a report on the Sarah Reporters that they were turned back while they went to seek refuge at the embassy.
And that's what I'm saying. It depends on the timing. In embassies, there are always a diplomatic channel through which things are done. And then again, when you get to an embassy and then either the consul general or the ambassador or whoever is authorized to give instruction is not there, all the other levels of staff will not take authority into their hand. You know how government works. And I
Well,
believe that actually is the problem, really.
yeah, that's totally not helping. We tried reaching out to the South African High Commissioner in Nigeria. He's a bit indisposed. I've asked him if he could speak with us tomorrow, so we'll have more conversations on this issue, so we can know what South Africa is planning to do about this issue.
Right.
We'll tell you more on Nigeria Info. But we must go now. It's been a fantastic conversation. Let's keep talking on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. I'm also on Twitter at Wemimo Sport. You can find Sheriff also on Twitter at Sheriff Quadry. Big thanks to Mr. Ejimofor Ike, Executive Secretary, Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce. I know you have a meeting. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander Orji from the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Achike Chude, as always, thank you.
Yes, always.
And Mr. Adetola Olubaje, we lost the line with him, but he reached us from South Africa as a president, Nigerian Union in South Africa. And big thanks to Zainab Yakin, Yvonne Ohafor, and Tosin Akimide for assisting on the show today. I am Wemimo Adewuni. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
I'm Sheriff Quadry.
From your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff.